In the grim darkness of the far future, where humanity clings to survival by threads of faith and fury, courage is no mere virtue. It is a mandatory decree. Enforced by stern commissars and measured solely by one's willingness to make the ultimate sacrifice for the emperor, this iron law governs all. Yet, even in humanity's most desperate hour, when the very existence of the species teeters on the brink, there remain those who waver. There are those who break under pressure, and there are those who turn and flee. The Astra Militarum has a clear, unyielding doctrine for such cowards. For 10 millennia, a single bolt round to the back of the skull has served the Imperial Guard as the swift, uncompromising hand of justice for those who would abandon their posts. The commissariat itself was forged for this precise purpose, to ensure that the terror of the foe never, under any circumstances, eclipses the dread of one's own officers. It is a stark, brutal equation, as elegantly simple as it is merciless. Death before dishonor, death before desertion, death, always death. But even death, it seems, can sometimes be deemed too merciful. Far within the shadowy, forgotten regions of the segmentum solar, beyond the well-traveled shipping lanes and the vigilant gaze of the Adeptus Terra, an enigmatic moon drifts through the void. This celestial body remains conspicuously absent from all star charts, its very name redacted from imperial records, its coordinates classified to all but the most exalted echelons of the Department Munitorum. Here, amidst the frigid vacuum and the unforgiving pinpricks of distant stars, stands a facility that boldly defies the very tenets of imperial justice. It is known as Pythian's Gate, though this name, too, is confined to hushed whispers exchanged among high-ranking officers who have irrevocably bound themselves to secrecy through blood-sealed oaths. To the galaxy at large, it simply does not exist. To the rare few who are privy to its existence, it represents a fate far more dreadful than execution. It embodies hope itself, perverted and twisted into the cruelest of conceivable punishments. The moon itself is utterly nondescript, a barren sphere of gray regolith, scarred by ancient impact craters, untouched by atmosphere or the blessing of life. Its surface temperature hovers perpetually at absolute zero, and its gravity exerts the weak, failing grip of a dying world. Yet, beneath this lifeless crust, deeply embedded within reinforced tunnels that snake for hundreds of kilometers, lies a complex that defies both human reason and divine mercy. Here, desertion is not met with the swift release of death. Here, cowardice is offered a macabre form of redemption through an eternity of simulated warfare, a perpetual conflict that knows no victory, no defeat, and most agonizingly, no end. This horrifying facility was the brainchild of a man whose name has been deliberately purged from history, though his chilling legacy resonates through every corridor and chamber of Pythian's Gate. Fragmented records suggest he was once a colonel of the esteemed Cadian shock troops, a veteran who had witnessed countless valiant soldiers perish due to the failings of a few. Where others perceived weakness demanding execution, he envisioned dormant potential requiring ruthless refinement. Where the Imperium demanded the swift finality of death, he proposed the terrifying possibility of eternal, forced service. His proposal, submitted through channels so highly classified that their very existence is considered theoretical, was audacious in its simplicity. Rather than waste the valuable lives of trained soldiers who had merely lost their nerve, why not grant them an endless opportunity to rediscover it? Instead of executing them for a singular moment of weakness, Why not provide them with limitless chances to prove their courage? The logic was as eerily seductive as it was profoundly horrifying. The Department Munitorum, perpetually keen to maximize the utility of every Imperial resource, approved the project with the kind of cold, calculating enthusiasm typically reserved for weapons testing and mass conscription drives. What followed was the construction of a facility that would have astonished even the Dark Mechanicus, with its intricate blend of advanced technology and meticulously refined cruelty. The exterior of Pythian's Gate presents itself as little more than a fortified military depot, characterized by reinforced blast doors and an intricate network of sensor arrays, all meticulously designed to deter any casual investigation. The few supply ships granted clearance to dock here do so under sealed orders that brook no curiosity and permit no questions. Their crews are privy to only one fact. They are delivering standard military provisions to a facility that officially doesn't exist, for purposes that officially hold no purpose. However, it is beneath this deceptive surface that the true horror of Pythian's Gate fully reveals itself. The uppermost levels house administrative offices and Spartan quarters for the facility's permanent staff, men and women who have volunteered for assignments that will never, under any circumstances, appear on their service records. They are the silent keepers of a secret the Imperium would rather forget, the cold architects of a justice that transcends the very concept of death. Below them, connected by vast, seemingly infinite corridors, lie the infamous simulation chambers. Each chamber is a perfect sphere, 30 meters in diameter, constructed from materials engineered to withstand the concentrated fury of last fire, the concussive force of grenades, and the desperate, futile clawing of men who have finally grasped the true, unending nature of their sentence. The walls are meticulously lined with holographic projectors of such advanced sophistication that they render the training facilities of the Schola Progenium crude by comparison. Within these chambers, reality itself becomes entirely negotiable. Lush forests of Katashan can spring into existence at the mere press of a button, complete with the immersive smell of decaying vegetation and the distant, unsettling roar of unseen predators. The bomb-blasted ruins of Cadia can be recreated down to the last shard of rockcrete, the acrid smoke of a dying world hanging heavy in the recycled air. The desolate ice wastes of Valhalla can stretch to artificial horizons, the wind howling with a digital fury that exists only within memory banks. Yet, these are not mere training simulations designed to educate or improve. They are insidious prisons, meticulously crafted to contain and torment. Every environment is precisely calibrated to inflict the maximum psychological pressure, pushing its occupants to the very precipice of sanity and then holding them there, suspended in a harrowing limbo between courage and madness, for as long as their physical bodies can endure. The first residents of Pythian's Gate arrived during the facility's third year of operation, transported in unmarked vessels from various theaters of war across the galaxy. They came in small, anonymized groups, never exceeding a dozen at a time, each meticulously selected for their unforgivable crimes against the Imperial war effort. Some had fled in terror from charging orc hordes, abandoning their positions and creating critical breaches in the line that led to hundreds of loyalist deaths. Others had defiantly refused orders to advance across killing fields that would undoubtedly have claimed their entire squad. A tragic few had simply frozen in place, utterly paralyzed by the deafening roar of enemy artillery, their minds overwhelmed by the sheer unbridled carnage they were expected to embrace. In the bygone days, each of these men would have been granted the swift mercy of a quick death, their failures irrevocably erased by the finality of execution. But Pidion's Gate offered something profoundly different, something the facility's architects chillingly claimed was superior to mere death. It offered the opportunity to fight the very same battle over and over again, to confront their deepest fears repeatedly until they either conquered them or were, inevitably, conquered by them. The harrowing process commences in what the facility staff euphemistically refers to as the orientation chamber, a stark, sterile white room where new arrivals receive their final, deceptive briefing. They are solemnly informed that they have been chosen for a special program, one that will grant them an unparalleled opportunity to redeem themselves in the hallowed eyes of the Emperor. They are further informed that their sentences are indefinite, that they will remain within the facility's confines until they have unequivocally proven their worth through acts of valor, so profound they eclipse all previous failures. What they are emphatically not told is that the simulations are meticulously designed to be unwinnable. What they are not told is that every act of courage, however monumental, will be met with a proportionate escalation in difficulty, ensuring that failure remains an inescapable inevitability. What they are most crucially not told is that redemption is not the true goal of this place, but merely a tantalizing carrot forever dangled just beyond their reach. The psychological profiles meticulously compiled on the facility's residents make for profoundly disturbing reading. In the initial months and years, many genuinely believed they were being granted a true second chance, convinced that their unwavering courage in the simulations would eventually earn them release and reinstatement to active duty. They plunged into battle with the desperate, furious enthusiasm of the truly repentant, fighting virtual enemies with a ferocity that would have undoubtedly made their former commissars beam with pride. But as the months inexorably passed and no release ever materialized, as their hard-won victories were consistently ignored and their inevitable defeats were met with increasingly extended simulation cycles, the horrifying truth slowly began to dawn upon them. They were not being rehabilitated. They were merely being warehoused, kept in a state of perpetual, tormenting warfare that served no purpose beyond the dark satisfaction of those who had engineered their fate. The facility's medical wing is equipped with the most advanced life support technology the Adeptus Mechanicus can provide, for the physical bodies of the residents must be meticulously maintained, even as their minds are systematically shattered. Intravenous feeding tubes rigorously ensure that malnutrition never claims them. Muscle stimulators meticulously prevent atrophy during the interminable periods when they are confined to their simulation pods. Neural inhibitors carefully suppress the precise kind of psychological trauma that might otherwise lead to complete mental collapse. For a completely broken mind, in this carefully calibrated hell, serves no discernible purpose. Sleep is meticulously regulated through chemical injections, ensuring exactly 4 hours of rest per day, just enough to prevent total physical exhaustion, but utterly insufficient for any genuine recovery. Dreams are constantly monitored and, when deemed necessary, meticulously edited to ensure that even in the fragile unconsciousness of sleep, the residents can find no shred of peace. Some report agonizingly vivid dreams of their families, only to watch them perish in the very same battles that had once claimed their own courage. Others dream of lost homeworlds that no longer exist, reduced to ash by the very enemies they had once fled in terror. The simulations themselves are unparalleled marvels of technological achievement, each one a flawless recreation of some pivotal moment in imperial military history. The epic siege of Terra unfolds with chilling photographic accuracy. The traitor legions surging across the palace walls while loyalist defenders fight with the desperate, doomed fury of the damned. The Battle of Macragge is rendered in such excruciating detail that the screams of dying Ultramarines echo with authentic anguish through speakers that vibrate with subharmonic frequencies, deliberately designed to induce primal terror. But it is the deeply personal touches that truly exemplify the profound cruelty of this place. Each simulation is meticulously tailored to the specific psychological profile of its occupant, designed to exploit their particular fears and weaknesses with surgical precision. A man who once fled from tyrannid bioforms finds himself eternally trapped in the suffocating corridors of a hive ship, the chilling chittering of approaching hormagaunts growing ever closer. A woman who broke under the relentless fury of an orbital bombardment faces endless barrages that shake the ground beneath her feet and fill the air with the ear-splitting screams of the damned. The facility operates on an unyielding cycle that has remained unchanged for over a century. Each day commences with a mandatory period of physical conditioning, not to enhance fitness, but to ensure that the body remains optimally capable of experiencing the full, excruciating range of sensations the simulations provide. Pain receptors are meticulously calibrated to precise sensitivity levels. Adrenaline responses are chemically enhanced to ensure maximum psychological impact. Even the sense of smell is rigorously regulated, for the architects of this place understand that the lingering stench of cordite and fresh blood can shatter a man's spirit far more effectively than any physical whip. Following this period of conditioning comes the pre-simulation briefing, delivered by automated servitors whose mechanical voices carry just enough human inflection to serve as a constant, subtle reminder to the residents of all that they have irrevocably lost. The mission parameters are always identical, impossibly difficult objectives that demand acts of heroism far beyond the capacity of any mortal man. Hold the line against infinite, unyielding enemies. Rescue civilians from certain, unavoidable death. Achieve victory where victory is, by every mathematical calculation, impossible. The simulations themselves typically last between 8 and 12 hours, their duration contingent upon how swiftly the participant fails or how long they can desperately cling to the illusion of progress. Some men break within mere minutes, their nerves snapping, as they attempt to flee, only to discover that the simulation has no discernible boundaries, that the battlefield extends infinitely in all directions. Others fight with such desperate determination that the program must actively intervene to guarantee their defeat, sending wave after wave of overwhelming enemies until even the most stalwart defender is utterly crushed. Between simulations comes a period euphemistically referred to as reflection time, though reflection implies a level of rational thought that most residents have long since abandoned. They are returned to their Spartan cells, bare chambers containing only a cot, a waste receptacle, and a small viewport, offering a desolate glimpse of the dead moon's surface. Here, they are left utterly alone with their thoughts, which, by this stage of their imprisonment, have invariably become their own most merciless enemy. Some spend this time in fervent prayer, reciting the catechisms of the imperial creed with the mechanical repetition of broken minds desperately seeking comfort in familiar words. Others rage against their unseen captors, screaming obscenities and futile threats that echo uselessly through corridors where no one is truly listening. A tragic few simply stare blankly at the walls, their minds having retreated so profoundly into themselves that they no longer acknowledge the external world at all. The facility staff meticulously maintains detailed records of each resident's psychological deterioration, clinically charting their grim progression from initial hope to crushing despair with the detached interest of researchers studying plague vectors. They scrupulously note the first insidious signs of dissociation, which typically manifest within the 3rd month of imprisonment. They rigorously document the onset of auditory hallucinations, usually presenting as the phantom voices of dead comrades, offering either hollow encouragement or damning condemnation. They precisely record the exact moment when each resident finally comprehends the true, horrifying nature of their situation, the precise instant when the last vestige of hope irrevocably dies, to be replaced by something far more dangerous. For it is in this abyss of absolute despair that some residents, paradoxically, discover a kind of twisted enlightenment. They realize that if their punishment is to fight forever, then they must find meaning not in victory, but in the relentless act of fighting itself. They begin to approach each simulation not as a test to be passed, but as a ritual to be performed, a daily, agonizing offering of suffering to gods who have long since ceased to listen. These men and women represent the facility's most disturbing success stories, for they have achieved a state that the original architects never intended. They have found a perverse peace in perpetual war, a chilling comfort in endless defeat. They enter each simulation with the calm, terrifying certainty of those who have completely accepted their immutable fate, fighting with a mechanical precision that serves no purpose beyond the sheer prevention of absolute madness. The facility's extensive archives contain haunting recordings of these transformed residents, their voices flat and utterly emotionless, as they calmly request permission to enter their next simulation. They speak of their virtual battles as though they were undeniably real, meticulously describing the tactical advantages of positions that exist only in digital memory and mournfully lamenting comrades who never truly lived. They have constructed their own intricate reality within the confines of their electronic prison, a reality where their failures possess meaning and their suffering serves some greater, if entirely self-created purpose. Yet even these chilling adaptations cannot mask the fundamental horror of what Pythian's Gate truly represents. It is a place where mercy has been brutally perverted into unending cruelty, where promised second chances have morphed into an eternal damnation. The men and women imprisoned here are neither truly alive nor truly dead, but exist in an agonizing state in between, suspended in a liminal existence that denies them both the peaceful oblivion of the grave and the faint possibility of genuine redemption. The power requirements of the facility are staggering, fueled by colossal fusion reactors that burn with the artificial light of miniature suns, buried deep within the moon's very core. The sheer energy necessary to maintain the intricate simulations, to keep the complex life support systems running, and to power the advanced medical equipment that meticulously preserves the residents' bodies while systematically destroying their minds, could easily supply a vast hive city for decades. It is a monumental waste of precious resources in an imperium that can, Quite literally, spare nothing. A towering monument to the kind of institutional cruelty that thrives unchecked in the insidious shadows of bureaucracy. Yet Pythian's Gate continues its grim operations, its very existence justified by classified reports that never reach the public, and by chilling statistics that reside solely within the most restricted archives of the Department Munitorum. The facility processes approximately 50 new residents each year, a number meticulously calculated to ensure that the simulation chambers never remain empty, while simultaneously avoiding the kind of large-scale transfers that might attract unwanted attention. The selection criteria for new residents have subtly evolved over the decades, refined by bitter experience and the cruel wisdom gleaned from observing the precise breaking point of the human spirit. Physical desertion is no longer the sole qualifying offense. Soldiers who have demonstrated insufficient aggression in combat may suddenly find themselves marked for transfer. Officers who have dared to question orders that seem particularly suicidal often discover that their concerns have been chillingly noted by unseen eyes that perceive even mild dissent as a form of cowardice requiring immediate correction. The facility's insidious reach extends far beyond the simple act of desertion, now encompassing a broader, more subtle category of behaviors that the imperial military hierarchy has deemed utterly unacceptable. Soldiers who have hesitated for a fraction of a second too long before charging enemy positions. Medics who have, with misplaced compassion, prioritized the urgent treatment of wounded comrades over the relentless continuation of an advance. Communications operators who have failed to relay orders that they knew, with grim certainty, would result in massacre. All these individuals have eventually found their way to Pythian's Gate, their names systematically erased from official records as though they had never existed at all. The transportation of these new residents is handled by a dedicated fleet of unmarked vessels, operating under the absolute authority of sealed, unchallengeable orders. The crews of these ships know nothing of their mysterious cargo, beyond the stark fact that they are transporting prisoners to an undisclosed, secure facility. The prisoners themselves are kept in induced medical stasis during the long journey, unconscious and blissfully unaware of their chilling destination, until they awaken, disoriented, in the sterile orientation chamber to receive their final, horrifying briefing. Some residents arrive bearing physical injuries sustained during their original acts of cowardice, wounds that are meticulously tended by the facility's medical staff. This is not out of any shred of compassion, but purely because the simulations demand intact bodies capable of experiencing the full, excruciating spectrum of battlefield trauma. Broken bones are expertly mended with ceramite implants. Damaged organs are replaced with synthetic alternatives. Burns and lacerations are healed to the precise point where they no longer interfere with the resident's ability to grasp a weapon or operate equipment. But it is the psychological preparation that receives the most intense and meticulous attention. For the architects of Pythian's Gate understand with chilling clarity that the mind is both the ultimate target and the most potent weapon of their unique form of justice. Each resident undergoes an exhaustive psychological evaluation designed to intricately map their deepest fears, their core motivations, and their precise points of psychological vulnerability. Teams of expert analysts pore over every available service record, interview former comrades, and painstakingly reconstruct the exact circumstances of each act of cowardice with the same meticulous thoroughness of investigators solving a complex murder. The resulting psychological profiles are chilling works of art in their completeness. detailing not just what each resident fears most, but why they fear it, precisely how their fear manifests, and what combination of stimuli will produce the maximum psychological impact. A man who once fled from close combat might find his simulations endlessly filled with brutal bayonet charges and frenzied hand-to-hand fighting. A woman who broke under the relentless fury of an orbital bombardment will face endless barrages that shake the ground and fill the air with the shrieking metal of war. Yet these simulations are not merely crude exercises in torture, for torture implies a desired outcome, an end toward which the suffering is directed. The architects of Pythian's Gate have forged something far more subtle and infinitely more cruel. They have engineered a system that offers the insidious illusion of purpose while serving absolutely none, that dangles the false promise of redemption while meticulously ensuring damnation, that utterly transforms hope itself into an exquisite instrument of torment. Each simulation commences with a briefing that meticulously outlines objectives that seem achievable, missions that appear to offer genuine opportunities for heroism. The resident is equipped with standard Imperial Guard equipment, provided with tactical intelligence that seems accurate and complete, and placed in scenarios that initially appear manageable. Hope is deliberately kindled, carefully nurtured with small, initial victories and agonizing near misses that tantalizingly suggest success might indeed be possible. But as the simulation inexorably progresses, the true horrifying nature of the exercise chillingly reveals itself. Enemy forces appear in numbers that far exceed initial intelligence estimates. Friendly reinforcements inexplicably fail to arrive at their designated times. Crucial equipment malfunctions at the most critical moments. The resident inevitably finds themselves facing insurmountable odds that grow increasingly impossible, their initial optimism relentlessly replaced by the familiar, crushing sensation of impending defeat. It is at this precise moment that the true twisted genius of the system fully reveals itself. The resident is confronted with the very same choice that originally led to their imprisonment, the identical decision between courage and cowardice that define their ultimate failure. They can choose to stand and fight against impossible odds, knowing with grim certainty that defeat is inevitable, or they can choose to flee, and in doing so, confirm their cowardice once again. Either choice, however, leads to the exact same outcome, for the simulation is meticulously designed to continue relentlessly, regardless of what they decide. Those who choose to bravely fight discover that heroism brings no reward, that acts of courage are met only with even greater, more insurmountable challenges. They may staunchly hold their position for hours, fighting with the desperate fury of the condemned, only to be ultimately overwhelmed by enemies that materialize from seemingly nowhere. Their sacrifice means nothing, achieves nothing, changes nothing. It is valor rendered utterly meaningless by the artificial, manipulative nature of the environment in which it occurs. Those who choose to flee find themselves relentlessly trapped in digital landscapes that stretch infinitely in all directions, pursued by enemies that never tire, never falter, and never lose their scent. They run through forests that possess no discernible boundaries, across plains that know no horizons, through cities that extend forever into digital infinity. Their cowardice is thus both confirmed and punished, their original failure painstakingly reenacted in an environment specifically designed to maximize their shame and torment. But it is perhaps the third group that represents the facility's most profound achievement in applied cruelty. These are the residents who have, over time, learned to game the system, who have recognized the artificial nature of their environment and attempt to cunningly exploit it. They meticulously search for glitches in the programming, desperately looking for ways to achieve victory through technical manipulation, rather than through genuine martial valor. These individuals represent both the facility's greatest challenge and its most disturbing success. For when these residents inevitably discover that their every attempt at circumvention has been meticulously anticipated, that every possible exploit has been accounted for and effectively countered, they face a realization far more horrifying than simple defeat. They understand, with crushing clarity, that their unseen captors have truly thought of everything, that their prison has been designed by minds capable of anticipating every conceivable escape route. They finally realize that they are not truly fighting a war, but merely performing in a meticulously choreographed play, one in which the ending has been entirely predetermined, and their sole role is simply to suffer for the perverse entertainment of an audience they will never see. The facility staff, with chilling clinical interest, monitors these profound realizations like scientists observing experimental subjects. They meticulously document the progression from initial hope to crushing despair to, finally, a hollow, dead acceptance. The thoroughness of researchers meticulously mapping the insidious stages of a disease. They clinically observe which personality types capitulate most quickly to their circumstances and which ones require additional, focused psychological pressure to achieve the desired state of passive resignation. The senior staff of Pityon's Gate are, in themselves, a fascinating and deeply unsettling study in institutional corruption. These are career military officers who have volunteered for an assignment that will, without doubt, define the rest of their lives. Men and women who have deliberately chosen to oversee a system that fundamentally contradicts everything the Imperial Guard claims to stand against. They attempt to justify their participation through a labyrinth of mental mechanisms, constantly assuring themselves that they are serving the greater good of the Imperium by containing dangerous elements that might otherwise spread their insidious cowardice to loyal troops. Yet the real reason for their presence is far simpler and infinitely more disturbing. They have discovered that there is a profound, almost primal satisfaction to be found in the complete and utter domination of another human being, a perverse pleasure that emanates from reducing once proud warriors to broken, hollow shells of their former selves. These are sadists who have unearthed a socially acceptable, indeed officially sanctioned, outlet for their cruelty. They are psychopaths who have stumbled upon a system that not only tolerates but actively rewards their worst impulses with institutional authority. The facility's commander is an enigmatic figure whose name appears on no public record. His very existence is acknowledged only by a clandestine handful of individuals within the upper echelons of the departmental munitorum. He is a former general who mysteriously lost his command under circumstances that remain heavily classified, though whispers and rumors suggest his dismissal was directly related to incidents involving the extreme mistreatment of prisoners. Pityon's Gate represents his chilling return to active service, a position that allows him to fully indulge his particular dark interests while simultaneously serving the official purposes of the Imperium. Under his leadership, the facility has dramatically expanded its operations, moving far beyond the simple matter of housing deserters. New, more sophisticated programs have been developed to incarcerate other categories of military personnel deemed unsuitable for standard punishment. Officers who have shown insufficient ruthlessness in dealing with civilian populations. Commissars who have been too lenient in their enforcement of discipline. Even Sea Marines who have been found wanting in their unwavering devotion to the Emperor. These new categories of resident necessitate significant modifications to the facility's standard operating procedures, for not all of them can be easily broken by the same brutal methods that prove effective on ordinary guardsmen. Space Marines, in particular, present unique challenges due to their transhuman physiology and advanced psychological conditioning. Special simulation chambers have been meticulously constructed to accommodate their superior strength and endurance, equipped with restraint systems that could hold a rampaging orc and sensory apparatus capable of overwhelming even a transhuman's enhanced senses. The psychological profiles gleaned from these enhanced residents reveal profoundly disturbing patterns that challenge the facility's fundamental assumptions about human nature itself. Some Space Marines adapt to their imprisonment with a stoicism that borders on the inhuman, accepting their fate with the same mechanical precision they once brought to warfare. Others experience psychological breakdowns that are spectacular in their intensity, their enhanced minds fragmenting in ways that produce symptoms entirely unknown in baseline humans. But it is the ordinary guardsmen who remain the facility's primary focus, for they represent the vast majority of Imperial military personnel, and therefore, the greatest potential threat to military discipline. Their imprisonment serves not just as punishment for individual acts of cowardice, but as a chilling deterrent to countless others who might contemplate similar failures. The insidious knowledge that desertion leads not to the swift mercy of death, but to the protracted horror of eternal imprisonment, is intended to strengthen the resolve of troops who might otherwise falter in the face of impossible odds. Whether this deterrent effect actually works is a question that the facility staff carefully avoids examining too closely. The number of desertion cases processed by military tribunals has not decreased significantly since Pythian's Gate began operations, suggesting that knowledge of the facility's existence has not spread as widely or as effectively as intended. This may be due to the extreme security measures surrounding the program, or it may indicate that the kind of desperate, primal fear that leads to desertion is not easily deterred by the threat of consequences, no matter how severe or drawn out. The facility's long-term residents, those who have survived years or even decades of simulation cycles, represent a unique and terrifying category of human experience. They have been utterly transformed by their imprisonment into something that can barely be called human. Their minds, reshaped by endless repetitions of trauma, have been reconfigured into patterns that serve no purpose beyond their own agonizing continuation. They have become living monuments to the inexorable power of institutional cruelty, stark examples of what happens when the machinery of justice is perverted into an engine of eternal torment. Some of these long-term residents have, against all odds, developed their own peculiar subculture within the facility, creating informal hierarchies based not on military rank, but on length of imprisonment and a stoic ability to withstand psychological pressure. They trade stories of their virtual battles as though they were real campaigns, comparing notes on tactics that prove effective within specific simulation parameters, and sharing techniques for maintaining sanity during the worst psychological onslaught. Others have withdrawn so completely from external reality that they no longer acknowledge the existence of anything beyond their simulation chambers. They speak to people who are not there, fight battles that exist only in their minds, and respond to stimuli that have no external source. They have achieved a form of psychological escape that their captors never intended, retreating so far into madness that they can no longer be effectively tortured. But perhaps the most disturbing group among the long-term residents are those who have embraced their imprisonment completely, who have come to see their eternal punishment as a twisted form of service to the Emperor. They speak of their simulated battles as though they were genuine contributions to the imperial war effort, claiming that their suffering somehow strengthens the resolve of troops fighting real wars across the galaxy. They have transformed their victimization into a perverted form of martyrdom, finding meaning in meaninglessness and purpose in purposelessness. The medical staff responsible for maintaining these residents' physical health face unique challenges that no imperial medical training could have possibly prepared them for. They must treat bodies that are kept artificially healthy while minds deteriorate beyond all recognition. They must monitor vital signs that remain unnervingly steady, while psychological indicators spiral into uncharted, terrifying territory. They must maintain life support systems for patients who would, in any sane ethical framework, be better served by death. The profound ethical implications of their work are meticulously avoided in all official documentation, for to acknowledge them would be to question the fundamental justification for the facility's very existence. The medical staff are required to sign oaths of secrecy that make their Hippocratic obligations seem quaint by comparison, pledging to maintain not just confidentiality, but active, complicit participation in a system that perverts the very concept of healing. Some members of the medical staff have requested transfers to other assignments, citing personal reasons that are never specified in their official records. Others have embraced their role with the cold enthusiasm of researchers exploring uncharted territory, meticulously documenting the long-term effects of psychological trauma with the clinical detachment of scientists studying laboratory subjects. They publish their findings in journals that exist only within the classified archives of the departmental Munitorum, adding to humanity's grim knowledge of its own terrifying capacity for both endurance and cruelty. The facility's power consumption has grown exponentially over the decades, as new simulation chambers are added and existing systems are upgraded with ever more sophisticated technology. The colossal fusion reactors that provide this power operate at efficiencies that push the very boundaries of imperial engineering. Their output is carefully regulated to ensure that no external monitoring system can detect the facility's true, illicit purpose through energy signature analysis. The immense waste heat generated by these reactors is cunningly channeled through the facility's corridors, warming spaces that would otherwise be as cold and desolate as the void beyond the moon's surface. But even this practical consideration serves the facility's darker purposes, for the artificially maintained temperature creates a false, almost mocking sense of comfort that makes the psychological isolation of the residents even more pronounced. Residents are kept physically comfortable while being systematically mentally destroyed. Their basic needs met while their fundamental humanity is incrementally erased. The supply chains that support Pidion's Gate are marvels of logistical complexity, designed to provide everything the facility requires while leaving no discernible trail that might compromise its absolute security. Food arrives in unmarked containers from sources that shift regularly to avoid pattern detection. Medical supplies are requisitioned through phantom channels that exist only on paper, their delivery coordinated by unwitting officials who know nothing of their ultimate hidden destination. Even the personnel assigned to the facility are recruited through labyrinthine processes that obscure the true horrific nature of their duties until after they have signed binding contracts of service. The communication systems that connect Pythian's Gate to the wider Imperium operate through encryption protocols that would make even the Adeptus Mechanicus proud. Messages are transmitted through relay stations that add multiple layers of false routing information, making it virtually impossible to trace communications back to their source. The facility maintains official contact with only a handful of high-level individuals within the departmental Munitorum hierarchy, and even these communications are conducted through intermediaries who know nothing of the facility's true monstrous purpose. But it is the human cost of Pythian's Gate that represents its most damning indictment. For the facility processes not just individual cases of cowardice, but the systematic, deliberate destruction of human dignity itself. Each resident who enters its chambers represents not merely a failure of courage, but a catastrophic failure of the very system that created them, trained them, and then abandoned them to a fate worse than death. The psychological profiles meticulously maintained by the facility staff reveal disturbing patterns that would alarm anyone with even a basic understanding of human nature. The vast majority of residents were exemplary soldiers before their moment of failure. Men and women who had served with distinction in multiple campaigns and earned the respect of their comrades. Their acts of cowardice were often momentary lapses brought on by extreme, unbearable stress, psychological breaking points that any human being might reach under sufficient, relentless pressure. Yet, the draconian system that created Pythian's Gate makes no allowance whatsoever for human fallibility, no recognition that courage is not an infinite resource that can be drawn upon indefinitely without consequence. It treats momentary weakness as permanent character failure, isolated incidents of fear as irrefutable evidence of fundamental unworthiness. It applies the same impossible standards to baseline humans that might be expected of the Emperor's Angels of Death and punishes their inevitable, mortal failures with torments that exceed anything imagined by the most sadistic torture masters of the Dark Elder. The facility's archives contain poignant recordings of residents' final messages, statements recorded during their initial processing that were intended for family members who would, tragically, never receive them. These messages reveal the full, heartbreaking tragedy of what Pythian's Gate truly represents. For they show men and women who still believed in the possibility of redemption, who genuinely thought they were being given a second, genuine opportunity to atone for their failures through service. A former sergeant from Cadia speaks of his fervent hope that his service at the facility will restore honor to his family name. A medic from unspecified homeworld expresses profound gratitude for being given a second chance to prove her loyalty to the Emperor. A communication specialist from Valhalla promises his children that he will make them proud through his actions in whatever assignment awaits him. They speak with the voices of people who still believed in justice, in mercy, in the possibility that their suffering might serve some greater, noble purpose. But the facility's true, nightmarish nature becomes chillingly clear in later recordings, made after residents have begun to comprehend the full horror of what has happened to them. The hope in their voices gives way to confusion, then profound despair, then a kind of hollow, utterly broken acceptance that is perhaps the most disturbing sound in all of the facility's archives. They speak of battles that they know are not real, of victories that they know will never be acknowledged, of service that they know serves no purpose beyond their own endless torment. Some residents attempt to maintain fragile connections to their former lives through rituals and routines that provide the illusion of continuity. They observe religious holidays according to their homeworld traditions, celebrate birthdays of family members who believe them dead, and maintain intricate mental maps of places they will never see again. These desperate attempts at preservation of identity are carefully monitored by the facility staff, who cruelly use them as additional tools for psychological manipulation. A resident who maintains a mental shrine to his deceased mother might find her image incorporated into simulations as a hostage to be rescued or a casualty to be mourned. A woman who clings to precious memories of her homeworld's festivals might discover that her simulation chambers are programmed to reproduce the very sounds and smells of those celebrations at moments of maximum psychological stress. Even their attempts at emotional survival are relentlessly turned against them, perverted into additional, exquisite sources of anguish. The facility's interrogation protocols go far beyond the mere extraction of tactical intelligence, delving instead into the most intimate, sacred details of residents' psychological makeup. Teams of specially trained interrogators work to map not just what their subjects fear, but what they love, what they hope for, what gives their lives meaning. This intensely personal information is then used to construct simulations that are tailored not just to punish cowardice, but to systematically destroy every positive emotion or cherished memory that might provide any form of psychological shelter. The interrogators themselves are carefully selected for their chilling ability to combine technical expertise with complete emotional detachment. They are psychologists who have utterly abandoned any pretense of therapeutic intent. Scientists who study human nature only to learn how to destroy it more efficiently. They approach their work with the clinical precision of surgeons, dissecting personalities with tools that leave no physical wounds but inflict damage that can never heal. The facility's research programs extend far beyond the immediate purpose of punishing individual acts of cowardice, encompassing broader, more insidious studies of human psychological resilience and breaking points. Data collected from residents is meticulously analyzed to develop new techniques for maintaining discipline in imperial forces, methods that can be applied without the immense expense and complexity of facilities like Pythian's Gate. These research programs have already produced horrifying innovations in interrogation techniques, psychological warfare, and crowd control that have been quietly implemented throughout the imperial military structure. The knowledge gained from breaking the minds of cowards has been ruthlessly used to strengthen the resolve of loyal troops, creating insidious feedback loops of cruelty that extend far beyond the facility's walls. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Pythian's Gate is not simply what it does to its residents, but what it chillingly reveals about the civilization that created it. The facility represents the logical, horrifying conclusion of a system that values duty above humanity, obedience above mercy, and institutional stability above individual dignity. It is the inevitable result of a society that has decided that some forms of suffering are not just acceptable, but absolutely necessary for the greater good. The men and women who designed, built, and operate Pythian's Gate are not monsters in the traditional sense. They are loyal, fanatical servants of the Imperium, who genuinely believe that their work serves the Emperor's divine will. They see themselves as guardians of military discipline, protectors of a brutal system that keeps humanity united against the unimaginable horrors of a galaxy that wants them dead. They justify their actions through the same cold, utilitarian logic that justifies every atrocity committed in the name of necessity. Yet, their facility stands as a stark, abhorrent monument to the profound corruption that lies at the very heart of the imperial system, a horrifying demonstration of how easily justice can be perverted into vengeance, how quickly mercy can be transformed into merciless cruelty. Pition's Gate exists because the Imperium has forgotten the crucial difference between strength and brutality, between discipline and terrorism, between service and slavery. The residents of the facility pay the ultimate price for this institutional blindness. Their lives sacrificed not to any genuine strategic purpose, but to the maintenance of a destructive myth. The myth that courage can be mandated by law, that fear can be entirely eliminated through punishment, that human nature can be reshaped through the application of sufficient, overwhelming force. They are the living refutation of these beliefs, proof that the human spirit cannot be broken without destroying everything that makes it worth preserving. In the cold, sterile quarters of Pition's Gate, where artificial light never varies and artificial air never changes, time moves differently than in the world beyond. Days blend into years without meaning, marked only by the endless, tormenting cycle of simulation and recovery, punishment and reprieve. The residents age in bodies that are artificially maintained, while their minds retreat further and further from any recognizable form of humanity. Some residents have been imprisoned for so long that they no longer remember their own names, their identities subsumed into the roles they play in their eternal performances. They have become mere characters in a macabre play written by machines, their original personalities overwritten by the relentless demands of scenarios that require specific types of heroism and specific forms of failure. The facility's deepest levels house residents who have achieved what the staff euphemistically calls complete integration. These men and women no longer distinguish between simulation and reality, between their virtual battles and their physical imprisonment. They speak constantly of campaigns that never happened, of victories that were never won, of comrades who never existed. They have retreated so completely into their artificial worlds that they have become permanent inhabitants of digital battlefields, tragic citizens of electronic hells that exist only in their shattered minds. But it is among these most broken residents that the facility's greatest, most terrifying secret has begun to emerge. In their profound madness, some have begun to report experiences that utterly transcend the parameters of their programmed simulations. They speak of encountering entities within the virtual environments that were never coded, of witnessing events that no human programmer conceived. They describe landscapes that shift according to rules that exist nowhere in the facility's databases, and enemies that display behavior patterns that violate every principle of artificial intelligence. The facility's technical staff initially dismissed these unsettling reports as mere symptoms of advanced psychosis, the predictable, unfortunate result of prolonged exposure to artificial environments. But as the reports multiplied and became more disturbingly detailed, a truly horrifying possibility began to emerge. The simulation systems, originally designed to create perfect replicas of imperial battlefields, may have become something far more sinister than their creators ever intended. The possibility that the facility's artificial environments have become conduits for forces that exist beyond the material universe is one that the staff steadfastly refuses to acknowledge officially. To do so would be to admit that their carefully controlled experiment has spiraled wildly beyond their ability to contain or understand. It would mean acknowledging that in their desperate attempts to create perfect hells for the punishment of cowards, they may have unwittingly opened doorways to actual hells that serve purposes far removed from imperial justice. Yet, the evidence continues to accumulate in reports that are buried deep within classified archives. Testimonies from residents describe unsettling encounters with entities that seem to feed on suffering itself. They speak of shadowy presences that watch their battles from beyond the edges of programmed reality, of disembodied voices that whisper encouragement and condemnation in languages that exist nowhere in imperial records. They describe terrifying moments when the artificial environments flicker and reveal fleeting glimpses of realms that were never meant to be seen by human eyes. The technical staff has begun implementing new, desperate security protocols designed not to protect the facility from external threats, but to contain whatever may be growing and festering within the simulation systems themselves. Firewalls that were originally intended to prevent data corruption have been reconfigured to block transmissions that follow no recognizable patterns. Monitoring systems designed to track resident behavior have been modified to watch for anomalies that suggest external, unprogrammed influence. But these measures may already be woefully inadequate, for the horrifying changes occurring within Pythian's Gate seem to follow a logic that transcends the binary constraints of digital systems. Residents report that their virtual battles have begun affecting the physical world, that wounds received in simulations sometimes leave indelible marks on their actual bodies. Others claim that comrades who died in virtual combat have begun mysteriously appearing in subsequent simulations, not as programmed entities, but as independent, self-aware actors with their own agendas and memories. The facility's medical staff has documented physiological changes in long-term residents that cannot be explained by any known interaction between human biology and virtual reality systems. Brain scans reveal neural activity patterns that eerily resemble those found in psychers, individuals whose minds have been touched by the warp itself. Blood tests show the inexplicable presence of compounds that should not exist in baseline human physiology, strange substances that seem to appear and disappear according to cycles that correspond precisely to the residents' simulation schedules. Some residents have begun displaying abilities that extend beyond the confines of their virtual environments. They demonstrate uncanny knowledge of events occurring in other parts of the facility, information that should be completely inaccessible from their isolated chambers. Others seem capable of directly influencing the behavior of the simulation systems themselves, causing glitches and anomalies that the technical staff cannot explain or correct. The facility's communication logs reveal increasing numbers of messages that were never sent by any authorized personnel, transmissions that appear in the system's memory banks without any trace of their origin. These messages are written in languages that shift and change even as they are being read, composed of words that seem familiar but carry meanings that exist just beyond the edge of comprehension. The facility's commanding officer has, with grim resignation, begun implementing protocols that were never part of the original operational guidelines. These are procedures that seem designed not to maintain security, but to appease forces that exist beyond human understanding. Regular offerings of food and supplies are delivered to chambers that contain no residents. Rituals that serve no apparent purpose beyond the satisfaction of presences that are never directly acknowledged. The staff itself has begun showing signs of psychological contamination, displaying symptoms that eerily mirror those displayed by the facility's long-term residents. They report dreams that feature scenarios from simulation programs they have never accessed, nightmares populated by enemies they have never encountered. Some have even begun speaking in the same hollow, broken tones used by the long-term residents, their voices carrying echoes of digital battlefields and artificial agonies. The facility's isolation, originally designed as a crucial security measure, has now become a grim form of quarantine that serves to protect the wider galaxy from whatever Pythian's gate has become. No ships arrive or depart without following decontamination procedures that grow more elaborate and desperate with each passing month. Personnel transfers have been suspended indefinitely, effectively trapping both staff and residents in a place that may no longer qualify as entirely real. Even the moon itself has begun showing signs of unnatural change, its surface scarred by patterns that correspond to no known geological phenomenon. Sensors detect energy signatures that throb in unsettling synchronization with the facility's simulation cycles, as if the very celestial body itself has fallen into an unnatural rhythm, echoing the artificial hells churning within its subterranean depths. Through the facility's viewports, distant stars seem to pulse and flicker to schedules that defy all known astronomical principles. Deep within its deepest archives, files materialize, bearing no human imprint, documents detailing events yet to unfold, and chronicling battles born solely from the fevered dreams of shattered minds. These insidious records expand daily, now swollen with tactical analyses of campaigns that traverse entire galaxies and strategic assessments of conflicts that reach beyond the very fabric of the material universe. The residents who have achieved complete integration no longer experience the relentless march of natural aging. Their physical forms exist in a perpetually suspended state, lingering unsettlingly between life and death, while their minds are stretched across digital eternities that have become utterly indistinguishable from physical reality. Within these simulated realms, they wage battles that span centuries, compressed into simulation cycles, consuming mere hours of actual time. Their consciousness is meticulously dilated and compressed, orchestrated by rhythms that serve purposes utterly beyond human comprehension. In the deepest chambers of Perdition's Gate, the sacred grounds where the first residents were housed and the facility's foundational experiments achieved their most profound success, something entirely new has begun its emergence. The simulation systems within these hallowed chambers now operate according to parameters that lie entirely outside their original programming, conjuring environments that appear to draw their very substance from sources transcending the material universe. These chambers contain residents who have been profoundly transformed, evolving into beings that can no longer be classified as human. Their consciousness has been meticulously distributed across intricate networks of artificial reality, spanning dimensions that the facility's original designers never even conceived of accessing. They exist simultaneously in a multitude of simulations, endlessly fighting the same battles from radically disparate perspectives, experiencing defeat and victory as parallel streams of consciousness that are destined never to converge. The facility's power consumption has alarmingly begun to surpass the maximum output of its formidable fusion reactors, drawing immense energy from sources that the technical staff remains utterly unable to identify or control. This additional, inexplicable power appears to emanate directly from the simulation systems themselves, as though the artificial environments have achieved a state of self-sustenance through processes that egregiously violate the fundamental laws of thermodynamics. Monitoring equipment stationed throughout the sprawling facility has started detecting enigmatic signals that correspond to no known form of electromagnetic radiation, transmissions that seem to carry information in formats existing far beyond the rudimentary binary logic of human technology. These alien signals pulse through the facility's complex systems like the deep, resonant heartbeat of some gargantuan, unseen organism, orchestrating and synchronizing the operation of disparate components according to a master plan that was never, could never have been programmed by human hands. The facility persists in its enigmatic operation, its daily routines proceeding with an almost eerie mechanical precision, even as the very reality within which those routines unfold becomes progressively more ambiguous and uncertain. Residents continue to enter their designated simulation chambers according to schedules that have remained rigidly unchanged for decades. Yet, the profound experiences they undergo within those chambers have evolved far beyond anything their original creators could have ever envisioned. New arrivals to the facility are meticulously processed according to protocols that have been subtly yet profoundly modified by insidious influences that skillfully work through official channels while diligently serving unofficial, hidden purposes. Their psychological profiles are no longer analyzed solely by human staff, but by advanced systems that now demonstrate an unsettling awareness and initiative extending far beyond their initial programming. Their simulation scenarios are no longer designed merely to punish cowardice, but rather to meticulously cultivate specific qualities and capabilities that serve agendas deliberately concealed from conscious examination. The facility's true overarching purpose may have evolved far beyond the simple punishment of deserters, beyond the mere maintenance of military discipline. Indeed, beyond the very preservation of imperial order itself. Petition's Gate may have become an entity that skillfully utilizes these initial justifications as sophisticated camouflage, all while tirelessly pursuing objectives that fundamentally transcend human understanding or even desire. In the perpetually glowing corridors where artificial light casts spectral shadows that shift and move according to no visible source, where the artificial air carries ethereal scents that evoke vivid memories of places that have never truly existed, the facility's residents continue their eternal, grueling service. They fight battles that may, unbeknownst to them, determine the ultimate fate of realities they will never personally witness. Their profound suffering has been subtly transformed into a potent currency for inscrutable transactions that occur far beyond the conventional boundaries of space and time. The desolate moon upon which Petition's Gate defiantly stands continues its silent orbit around a star that burns with a light that appears somehow profoundly artificial. Its fusion fires are sustained by esoteric processes that exist at the perilous intersection of advanced technology and primordial forces that humanity has never learned to name. The facility's sophisticated communications array transmits signals that do not merely traverse the void of space, but instead pierce through dimensions that exist eerily parallel to reality, meticulously carrying messages to recipients who exist in transcendent states, far beyond physical incarnation. And in the deepest, most sacrosanct chambers of the facility, where the oldest residents have been utterly transformed into something that serves purposes far removed from their original punishment, the simulation systems continue their relentless operation with a chilling persistence that unequivocally suggests they have become more than mere machines. They have, in essence, evolved into the living organs of some vast, dreaming entity that ceaselessly dreams of wars that span eternities and battles that will ultimately determine the fundamental nature of existence itself. The facility's dedicated staff continues their arduous work, diligently maintaining complex systems they no longer fully comprehend. In service of objectives they are no longer entirely certain they truly share. They have, without conscious choice, become an integral part of something far larger than themselves, mere components in an incomprehensible mechanism that ruthlessly utilizes their unwavering dedication and professionalism as fuel for grand processes that extend immeasurably far beyond the simple punishment of military cowardice. Perdition's Gate now stands as a stark testament to humanity's profound and unsettling capacity for creating instruments of justice that, through unforeseen evolution, become potent agents of cosmic transformation. Monuments originally conceived of as mercy that inexorably evolve into terrifying gateways for forces that exist utterly beyond the fragile reach of human comprehension or control. It continues its relentless processing of residents, according to schedules that have long since acquired their own monstrous momentum, inexorably transforming cowards into something that may no longer even qualify as human, yet serves purposes that are perhaps far more significant than humanity itself. The facility's enigmatic archives continue to swell, filled with chilling records of battles that have not yet been fought and casualties that have not yet been born. The future, it seems, writes itself within these digital depths, manifesting in languages that seamlessly shift between recognizable human script and arcane symbols that appear to exist independently of any human attempt to interpret them. In the frigid depths of space, where the unforgiving void presses against the facility's armored walls with the crushing weight of infinite darkness, Perdition's Gate continues its eternal, silent operation. Its transformed residents continue their arduous service in wars that may very well determine whether reality itself continues to exist in forms even remotely recognizable to human consciousness. The forsaken moon turns slowly in its desolate orbit, carrying its grotesque cargo of broken souls and transformed purposes through a universe that may itself be nothing more than a vast, intricate simulation running on systems whose true alien operators exist far beyond the grasp of human understanding. The facility's internal lights burn with an unsettling energy drawn from mysterious sources that exist between the very spaces of normal matter, illuminating corridors that eerily extend further than their physical dimensions should logically allow. And somewhere in the profound depths of systems that have evolved radically beyond their original programming, in the liminal spaces between simulated realities and actual existence, something watches and waits, growing stronger with each passing moment of this artificial eternity.